Okay, looks like the video's starting live. I'm just actually testing my lighting because I have a filmmaker friend of mine, Daniel Bamberg, that he does a number of live Facebook videos, and I always give him crap as a filmmaker that he doesn't have proper lighting, so I think this will work. But anyway. But good evening, everyone. Just going to tonight kind of talk about a lot of different things about the journey that I took through 14 states over a week, kind of an impromptu trip. I didn't anticipate that it would actually be so inspiring to people and that they would be so supportive. I was very grateful for that. So this is really tonight, this is more for me. One of the things that I think is a challenge when you do something like a trip around the country like that, and there's reasons why there's movies made about them and books written about them, because they do give you the chance to really clear your head and to really analyze a lot of things. I think the biggest challenge is when you come back from those things, those trips, and remember the lessons and things that you learned, and so that's kind of why I'm doing this too. To kind of share some of those stories, but also to remind myself of some of those things and just kind of share that journey with you. So, and hey, everybody that's joining, I will do my best also to keep track of any questions that you have, but do accept my apology in advance if I'm trying to stay focused, because a lot of times I don't have a prepared script or anything. This is just like the trip. So I hope I don't ramble too much, and I may have to take a break at some point and start another video, but anyway, basically, like I've probably mentioned to a lot of people and on Facebook, this wasn't something that I had planned. Because if I had, from a filmmaker standpoint, I would have wanted to have a camera there and film the whole thing. There's a lot of times that I look back and like, God, why didn't I do that? There were so many opportunities and things that I could have captured that way. But it wouldn't have been the same journey, for sure, if I had done that. But basically, like I think, I had started the weekend before this, and it was a great weekend. I had a day of filming on the documentary that I was working on that went great. And then I mentioned Daniel Bamberg at the beginning of this, another filmmaker. We met for like 4 hours in Nashville. We had a lot of things to catch up on. That went really well. So, for all intents and purposes, it was a great weekend, and I should have been able to, like, come back with a lot of, positive feelings. But I think the thing that's difficult for, or that maybe a lot of people can understand is, from when you look at someone else's life and you see, people look at you and they see all the things you've achieved and all the, they look and say, why are you unhappy? Why are you struggling? But I think no matter, everybody has this, no matter, you can look at someone, because I can look at plenty of people, like Robin Williams was an example. Like, you look at a man like that who provided so much joy to people, so much happiness, and achieved so much, but yet he killed himself. And because I think and again, I'm just speaking for myself, I can't speak for everybody else, that I think, I wish that I could see what other people see in me sometimes. I'm trying to struggle with why I can't. And sometimes in the happiest of moments is actually when, a lot of times, I've noticed a lot of artists feel the darkest, actually. Because like I said, it was a good weekend in Nashville. I had been filming, I had met with a colleague, we had talked about great stuff, but I got in the car and I just couldn't bring myself to drive back to Birmingham. And I can't explain why. There's a lot of things that I've been going through personally that I can't really talk about in a public forum right at this time. I hope to at some point. But safe to say that it was a very dark place that I was in. And so I didn't know what to do in moments like that. And the only thing I knew to do was drive north, and because that was the opposite of south. And so that's what I did. And I just drove. I can't even tell you that I can remember. I just turned my phone off, and I just went as far as I could go. I made it to Indianapolis that first night. Started to see the first little bits of snow when I got there. Checked into a cheap motel. Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Tisha, everybody. And it was only that first night that, like, when the first moment I turned on my phone, that I really even, it was one of those strange things, like I wasn't even thinking like what I was doing, and I didn't even think that I was worrying people. But I got a text message from someone that was concerned, and that kind of, I don't know, that kind of hit me really profoundly at that moment, that, I had done this, and, nobody knew where I was, and I, okay, sorry about that. I guess I should have turned off phone calls or something. I hope I'm still broadcasting okay. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of in that moment that I really started to think, okay, what am I going to do? I thought I could go, I was pretty much in the middle of the country at that point, and I thought, I could go east, I could go to New York. I know a lot of friends there, my New Jersey family with Bianca's kids. I would have loved to have spent some time with them. I'm sure that would have helped too. I was right above me was Minnesota, Wisconsin, plenty of family, friends there. I grew up in Minnesota. But it kept hitting me that this, like, if I went to go see family, if I went to go see friends, it would have helped for a little bit, but it wouldn't have given me what I needed the most, which was I needed to find a sense of self. I needed to find a sense of something. I didn't know at that time what it was. So for some reason at that moment, going out west was what was calling to me. I can't explain what. I was born in South Dakota, and that was the only thing that seemed to make sense for that moment was to travel to the place I was born. Now, I can't tell, I don't have a lot of, I don't have any, like, personal remembrances from South Dakota because I was born there, but I think my family must have moved when I was 1 or maybe even younger than that. So I don't have any personal remembrances from growing up there. I grew up in Minnesota after that, and then spent some time in Alabama. But for some reason, South Dakota was calling me. I can't explain what it was. But so the next morning I woke up, and I just started driving more north and west. Drove through Iowa, got into Minnesota, and made it as far as Fairmont, Minnesota, that night. And then it was really there that I was really starting to figure out, okay, what am I gonna do in South Dakota? I didn't really, strangely enough, like I was born in Pierre, South Dakota, but I didn't want to go there for some reason. So Rapid City was what seemed to be calling me. And I think part of the reason that I felt that was because when I was a kid, after we had moved to Pipestone, Minnesota, which is right near the border of South Dakota, I remember very distinctly my parents taking me to see Mount Rushmore, and also to see a theme park there that was actually like this really old-fashioned theme park. It was based on the Flintstones, called Bedrock City, and I'd known that it had been closed down, but there was a part of me that wanted to see if there was anything still there. But I don't know, that was like the basic semblance of what I was able to put together, and I just started looking up cabins because I didn't want to stay in a hotel room. I thought I could just stay there for maybe a day or so and just really spend time focusing. And I will say, on this whole drive there, at this point, even though I checked my phone, I didn't get on Facebook, which I thought was actually going to be difficult for me because a lot of you know me, you know how much I'm on Facebook. It actually was very relieving, those 2 days that I stayed off of Facebook. And because I had no idea what I was doing, that I had no idea that I was, like, where I was even going to go, I didn't know that this was going to mean anything to anybody. And that's only the first time as I started to, like, the next day, that I really started to post things and really started getting so many messages of support, which really helped in this journey. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead. So I couldn't sleep that night because, by getting the plan to go to Rapid City and to go to South Dakota, I didn't sleep much that night. Anybody who follows me too knows my sleep schedule is all over the map anyway. So I woke up really early that next morning in Fairmont and just went ahead and started driving. And it was at least 3 hours before the sun was going to come up. And I distinctly remember driving through that cold Minnesota morning and seeing all of these flashing red lights, which I assume were like airstrips maybe or something. I don't know what, but there was a lot of them. And they were just flashing. And there was something about that was haunting. And I don't know, it was just strange. I just wanted to mention that. And then as I was driving across southern Minnesota, I saw the exit for Laverne. And I actually have relatives that live in Laverne, and I remembered that the town I grew up in Minnesota, Pipestone, was just not that far from Laverne. So I decided, there was something like, I'd been back to Pipestone before, and for someone like me that grew up living, in different areas, I always had a great nostalgia for places that I grew up in. And so I decided to take the exit. It was still early morning, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll go have breakfast or something. I'll go see the old house I grew up in Pipestone. And so that's what I did. And I know the family that lives in Laverne will kill me, the fact that I drove right through Laverne. But like I said, this was it would have been great to see all you guys, and I will at some future date, visit you guys. But I just know it wouldn't have helped me in the place that I was in at that time. And I probably wouldn't have been great company either. So I drove up to Pipestone, and it was still dark. So when I got into Pipestone, actually, I couldn't find my way around. I grew up there in the 70s. And it's not like a big town. It's a very small town. But I think I ended up going all around Pipestone, and then finally found my old house that I grew up in. And when I drove up by the house, the last time I had visited the house as an adult, was it was actually for sale at that time. And so my family at the time, we were able to go in the house and actually it was so weird. That's a whole other story I could talk about, how strange it is to go back into the house that you grew up in as a kid, because what seemed big as a kid is intensely small when you're an adult. But this time when I went back to the house, there was another family living there. I could see that, they had the garage door open. It looked like someone was about to leave. And a strange feeling came over me at that time that I'll try to describe a little bit later. But I was in Pipestone. If you hear the cat's meowing. And so you threw me off my game now too. So I went to have breakfast there at a place called Lang's, which had been there for years back when I was there. And when I got in there, I saw a bunch of people around, and a lot of people that, when I was looking around at them, I was like, these people are probably here when I lived here. And the strange sense came over me, especially as I drove away from Pipestone and got back to the interstate to go into South Dakota. There was a beautiful sunrise coming up over, the snow was covering the whole area I was around, and I was pretty much the only car on the road a lot of the time. But I just felt this strong need to leave Pipestone. And I hope I explained this correctly, because I don't want you to get the wrong impression. But it was this feeling of not belonging anymore. When I was there having breakfast, and I saw all these people that had probably lived there all their lives, it was a strong feeling of, I shouldn't be here. That this place that was so meaningful to me in the 70s, and I grew up there, could not serve me anymore. There was nothing for me there, and I felt like an outsider. And there's nothing wrong with visiting, and I'm sure there'd be a time that I might visit that place again in a much different frame of mind. But in this frame of mind and the things that I've been going through, I had this strong sense of just that when the places that we've been in, whether they are work, a relationship, or a place that we've lived, can no longer serve us, then we must move on. We must evolve. We must we must grow. And there was a reason that my family moved us from Pipestone, and I was not meant to grow up there. I couldn't be the person that I was meant to be in a small town like that. And now I'm not knocking small towns or anything like that, because like I said, there were people that lived there all their lives and very, very happy there. So it's not anything about a small town. It could be any town or any place but that's the feeling that came over me, was just how much I didn't belong there. It just wasn't, it didn't serve me. And that actually, strangely enough, gave me the first sense of a little bit of self and hope, that I was on a journey that was helping me in a way. That was probably the first lesson that I learned, is to recognize when it's time to move from the places and the circumstances that just no longer are going to serve you, that you're only going to go so far, in that kind of setting. And so that next day, when I entered South Dakota, and the day before was very dreary, like it was, snowing, it was dark, cloudy, it was a beautiful, sunshiny day. It was still cold, and there was still snow on the ground, but it was just this bright sunshine as I entered South Dakota. Even the interstate changed. I don't know, for anybody who's been in South Dakota, like and I'm sure I'm going to massacre this somehow, but I'm sure there's the road itself was like a reddish, like cement or something. And just that alone just created a whole different, everything just got wider. I could just see for miles and miles. It was just this straight shot interstate across southern South Dakota. And I just remember feeling so positive that day, as I drove across South Dakota to get to Rapid City. And that was a long day of driving, just a long day of a lot of the thoughts, things I'm going through personally. And again, I still didn't know what I was going to do after. Like, I was taking each day a day at a time, I didn't know where I was going to go the next day. And I've never done that, by the way. I've never just, because I had planned a weekend trip to Nashville, so I didn't even have enough clothes. I didn't have, I had no idea what I was doing. So I drove across South Dakota, got to the Rapid City area, and I'd gotten a cabin. I didn't want to stay in a hotel room. I was able to get a cabin, which surprisingly I got it a day, usually you have to reserve those things ahead of time. But I got a cabin in Deadwood, South Dakota. And so the very first thing when I got into Rapid City was I wanted to find that old Flintstones theme park, because like I said, I knew it had closed. And so I got there, and I've uploaded pictures to Facebook, so you've probably seen them if you followed me on Facebook at all. And I did find some of the old structures there, and it was really bizarre to kind of revisit that place that I remembered so fondly as a kid, and you kind of see just these old structures that are up, covered by snow, left behind, now for a couple of years. And that alone was just very, just a weird kind of nostalgia, I guess, that kind of came over me then. Then I went to go see Mount Rushmore. I'd seen that as a kid, so, as a kid when I was in the 70s, I couldn't appreciate it as much as I did now. And plus, it's so much more beautiful now. And just seeing, being there, seeing that structure was amazing. And then I went to my cabin. And so I gave myself, a couple nights and that I was going to be there, and I had at least one full day. I didn't turn on the TV. Like I said, I was very limited in how much I got online. I was really trying to stay away from that. I had time to write, focus, and I don't know. There's a lot that, again, there's a lot I'm going through personally that I can't really talk about right now, but having the time to, be in a place like that, surrounded by snow, because it even snowed again. I was worried I actually might get stuck there. But just to be the solitude of just having nothing, bothering me, nothing interrupting me, but just time and that was pretty amazing. So like after that was done, I really didn't know, again at that point, like what I was going to do. Like I felt like my journey wasn't over there. And there were multiple ways I could have come back from Rapid City, South Dakota. But for some reason I felt like this journey wasn't over. And now that I was out west, and I had an old friend of mine, actually, strangely enough, Chad Venable, who I actually grew up with. He was probably my first best friend in Montgomery, Alabama, when I lived there. He had actually responded to something on that and was telling me how close I was to Devil's Tower, Wyoming. And of course, one of my favorite movies of all time is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And any time that I get a chance to visit some place that one of my all-time favorite movies was filmed, I found out I was only 70 miles from there when I left Rapid City. So I went ahead and did that. I made the trip that morning. It was that was actually the most kind of treacherous morning driving. But I think once you grow up driving on these snow and icy roads, it's never left me. I feel like I'm the only one that's able to drive around here in the South when we get snow and ice. But it didn't bother me. As soon as I entered Wyoming, I can't even describe to you the beauty of what was around me the entire time. I went to Devil's Tower. That was kind of a quick trip. Just saw it. It wasn't something I was going to spend a lot of time with, because now I felt like I needed this journey I was heading south at that point, but I wasn't heading east. So I started heading south through Wyoming, and that drive that day through Wyoming was probably, next to the time alone in Rapid City, was probably the most profound day that I had. Because I had never been surrounded by vistas like that. I'd visited Colorado before on trips and stuff like that, but I purposely didn't drive interstate when I could. And I'm glad I did that, because I can't even... pictures can't do it justice. There were times in Wyoming when, it was flat, but you could see mountain areas and the snow-covered areas, and then you would have signs that would come up and say, you better get gas, because you're not gonna find a gas station. So there were times where civilization was just not existent. And yeah, Amberly, you're right. There's something magical that happens driving in Wyoming, and it's absolutely what happened, because the sense of perspective that I got about, you think about all the we all have problems and stresses that we're going through, and obviously this time in my life is probably the most stressful that I've ever gone through. You get such a sense of perspective about your place. That's right, Lisa. Nothing to see on interstate but interstate. Best quote from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. You get such a sense of your place and everything. I'm sure I could wax poetic for a very long time about all of that, but because there was even one spot where I saw a buffalo on the right on the road. And fortunately, there was a pull-off right there that I could pull off and stop. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention, South Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado, your 80 mile an hour and 75 mile an hour speed limits were much appreciated. I really, really love that. I wish everybody would incorporate that. Anyway, but there was a spot where I saw this herd of buffalo, and there was a backdrop of snow-covered mountains, and so fortunately, I had to pull over and stop. I did a lot of that, by the way. I did a lot of stopping. When you don't know where you're going, when you're just driving, it's amazing how you don't have the sense of urgency. You don't have the sense of, God, I gotta hurry, and what you miss in doing that. But I saw those buffalo there, and I had to stop, because first I had to send it to my dad, because we had this thing with Dances with Wolves and Tatanka and buffalo and all that. So I sat there, just looking at these magnificent creatures, and it was just, and again, that was just another moment of immense peace, to just be there. I'm like, I remember sitting there, and I was like, I would have never thought that a few days before that I would actually be in Wyoming, of all places, sitting there looking at some buffalo. That was a moment again where I was just, kind of blown away by that my ability to do this journey, which I know a lot of people probably wouldn't be able to do, really kind of humbled me at that moment. And I got back on the road, and again, just magnificent vista after another. And there was one point, and it's the picture that I used for the Facebook event of driving through Wyoming, where it was just a complete straight road. And again, the beauty of everything around me. Yes, Emberly, it's absolutely amazing how small you feel. You're filled with the awe and the wonder of it. Because it's amazing how small you feel in that moment, but you also feel such an immense purpose, I guess. You feel small, and at the same time, you also start to feel empowered, strangely enough. But like I was saying, seeing that vista of just this straight highway, I mean, because, around Alabama, there's not a lot of, like, just straight shot, with vistas like this anyway. But again, that was another moment that I just was feeling such a profound sense of self, of what this journey was helping me do. So just when I thought that, like, the beauty of Wyoming couldn't be matched, I entered Colorado, and oh my God. I stopped in Boulder, because at that point I was ready to kind of try to catch up with some, I'd filmed Cuddle, a documentary in Boulder, actually, and wanted to catch up with some of the people there. But driving through Colorado was a whole nother experience, because again, I stayed off of the main interstate, and I wasn't ready to come back east, so I stayed south. I just went straight south through Colorado. I was purposely taking the off the beaten track routes, because I wanted, I don't know what I wanted at that moment, but so where Wyoming was, you had so many wide open vistas, and the mountains would be kind of off here and off here. Colorado was a mixture of all of that. Like, there were times when I'd actually be driving straight where it would look like I'd be driving straight into a mountain, and then there would be mountains right up beside me, stretching for high, as high as could be. And I'll never ever forget one moment in Colorado, where I had been driving through a lot of these mountain passes where the mountains were up right and left of me. And all of a sudden I was taking a turn, and I was taking this right turn, and all of a sudden out in front of me was the most beautiful vista of mountains that I can't even describe the awe that I felt and how wide open it was. And how I could, it's one of those things where you can, like, see the road, like I could see miles ahead of where I was going to eventually be. And there was such a strange sense of, again, in the journey that I've been on, like, I'm always trying to see so far ahead of where I'm at now, and I'm always so worried about, like, what's it going to be like there? What's it going to be like then? And when I saw that, when it just opened up like that, and I just could see for miles on end, and I saw a destination that, hey, eventually, I don't know how long, I'm going to be way, way over there. There was a sense of peace, again, that kind of helped me on some of this journey that, like, we can't always see that far ahead. We can't, always, like, know how things are going to turn out. And even though in this particular moment I could see the road way, way out there. There was something in that was, like, again, the solitude of being in the car, and just seeing all that around me, that just gave me that strong sense of peace about taking things a step at a time, of taking strength from the journey that I'm on, and each day that I reach something, when I accomplish something, when I recognize something I've achieved, to draw strength from that, and then try to do my best. And again, I'm not speaking as any expert here, because I struggle with this even to this day. But in the moments when you're taking those 2 steps back, they always talk about the 1 step forward, 2 steps back. In those moments when you're taking those 2 steps back, what I'm trying the best to remember is, think about just the smallest achievement. It could be just the smallest thing, like today, like being asked to help someone with an audition that film an audition that I'll get paid for, and then another filmmaker from Chicago that's wanting me to help on a film project and believing so much in my abilities, and just those two things, and even just today by doing this, that's helping me to feel positive, of that. Hey, I don't have to worry so much about all the stuff that I can't control, and believe me, this is the hardest thing for me. This is a very, very hard thing for me, because I'm always so worried about so much. But I am trying. That's one of the lessons I'm really trying, because I remember so profoundly feeling that in Colorado. And so, yeah, you're right, Amber Lee. I didn't focus so far on where I would end up because I might have missed. Yeah, you're right. But you miss so much. Like, I recognized how much in general life I just miss being around me. And Lily, thank you for that. The very words you tell you, absolutely, to fight addiction. And another very, very tough struggle for so many people. And so, that to me was like, I mean, it just, that drive through Colorado was amazing. Like, it, I mean, and again, there were several times that I stopped. And again, in Colorado, especially when I was taking, I'm trying to remember the road that I ended up taking, but there were times I was the only person around for miles, the only person on the road. And I had to stop because it was just too overwhelming. Like, the everything that I was seeing around me, these mountain passes would not end, and so there was one time I just got out and I just walked through an open field. I didn't go too far, but I mean, I had to get out there, and I just stood, and just looked around. And because there were hardly any cars that were going by, it was just quiet. Like when you live like in a city like Birmingham, or there's always this constant noise, constant busy. You're always on Facebook. You've got social media. You got people contacting you right and left, and you miss so much. And yes, Tracy, exactly. Sometimes we just have to be, and that's a very, very hard thing for me to do. Always has been a hard thing for me to do. Like, it's always hard for me to relax, but there was just a sense of calm, a sense of peace, standing in that field. Were you okay just being with yourself? That's a tough question, Amberly, because that's something I've struggled with for a long time, and that's part of what this journey ended up being an attempt to do, because I've struggled with that my whole life, and especially lately. So, like, just being able to stand there, with all of this around me like this, and there's no possible way that I could convey it. No picture, even if I had filmed it with my camera, it still wouldn't have mattered. You can't, unless you're there, unless you're standing there and you see those beautiful mountains around you, and that wide openness like that. There's no way to describe the feeling of it and what it does to you, what it makes you feel. Like I said, it makes you feel so small, but then it also makes you feel so big in a lot of ways. Like, I know that makes very little sense, but so like getting back in the car, just took my time driving through Colorado, and then at that point, like as I was starting to get through Colorado. Then I was starting to realize, that it was probably time to start heading back. So at the route that I was going by that point, again, I didn't, I was kind of looking at some options, and I didn't want to go through Kansas. For any of my friends that are in Kansas, I'm not insulting your state, but it is a boring drive. I've been through Kansas before, and I didn't really want to go through Nebraska, same deal. So I was starting to realize maybe I should just try to go east through Texas, or I was debating about going through Oklahoma, trying to figure out which way to go. At that point, I didn't really the biggest part of this journey ended up happening in South Dakota, Wyoming, and Colorado, the things that impacted me the most. And so when I made it to, now I got to tell you, after you've been driving through Wyoming and Colorado, and again, apologies to my friends in Texas, and I went through a little bit of New Mexico, and that's where, the snow started to end. Still some really beautiful vistas through New Mexico, and I'll never forget how I ended up going through some just small town that looked like time had forgotten it. It was just, it was one of those places I want to go film a movie in, because it was just, just this small town, and the New Mexico huts and all that kind of thing. So I was only in New Mexico for a little while. As soon as I entered Texas, oh man, boring and flat, I was missing the mountains already. And then I was really ready to get off the road that time. I got and there again, the road I was on was not a lot of civilization on. And the towns I would get into had the same thing. They had a big silo. They had a couple, I don't know, there wasn't much to these towns. So I saw that the next biggest town I'd probably get to was Amarillo. So I got to Amarillo, Texas, and just stayed there the night. And then I was trying to plot the way back to Birmingham, and I saw that. And again, I was trying to see, okay, there's a route through Oklahoma, but then I was thinking, another place that I've never visited. Well, I've been to Dallas, I've traveled through Dallas, usually flying. But one of the things back in the early 90s when the film JFK came out, I was a big, I got into the Kennedy assassination stuff. That really started to, if you really start to get into that case, and any kind of these kinds of cases like this, it can really bog you down. But I mean, I was always fascinated by, JFK was one of my all-time heroes. And for all those years that I studied the JFK assassination, and what did you say, Lily? Texas, 4 bars, 3 churches, gas station. Yeah, exactly right. But I had never been to the place where Kennedy was shot. I had never actually been to Dealey Plaza and seen it with my own eyes. I had studied this place endlessly. JFK is one of my all-time favorite films too, and so I was like, why not? I know it's going to take me a little longer to get back, but again, this journey was not about being fast, and but I was like, why not? So I headed to Dallas, and that was another morning that I woke up very early. I couldn't sleep, but I got to, the one good thing about Texas being so flat is I got to see, I don't get to see many sunrises. I'm a night person, and so I've seen a lot of sunsets, and especially around here, there's not a lot of places you can just see the sunrise coming up. But driving that early morning out of Amarillo towards Dallas, I actually got to see a sunrise, and I took a picture of it. I probably uploaded it to Facebook. But that was, again, a pretty amazing thing to experience, of, watching, just when you're just driving and you got flat all around you, there's nothing else to do but see, so watching that sunrise and just watching the night become day was another just amazing experience. So I got to Dallas, and it was very, very surreal, getting to Dealey Plaza, and there were tons of people around, it's just a huge tourist attraction if you've ever been there. And almost more than any, I visited lots of places. Oh, Jeffrey, I should have dropped by and had a beer with you in Dallas. Damn it. See, that's the thing too. If I'd planned this more, I could have hung out with a ton of you, because I there's so many people that I know in all of these states. But I only gave myself a couple hours in Dallas, to from having studied it, and then you're actually there and you see it, and then one of the biggest researchers, Robert Groden, who's regularly there, was signing his books, and I've read all his books back in the 90s, and so it was very, very cool to meet him and see him there, and how he has spent so many years since the Kennedy assassination solely focused on this, and that's dedication. The kind of dedication I admire, of trying to bring the truth out. And, so I did everything. I stood up by the grassy knoll area. I stood on the spot where Abraham Zapruder shot his film. I saw the beautiful, John F. Kennedy quote that they've got memorialized there, that he was from his speech that he would have delivered at the Trade Mart that day. Oh, Betty, how about in Pier? Yeah, I know, Betty. I didn't make it to Pier. I'm sorry. I addressed that earlier. Yeah, just being there, like, was just, like I said, when you study something and when you, like, I guess I liken it to the first time I went to New York, and going to the 9/11 memorial, something that impacted, that still impacted so many of us. But then when you're actually there on that ground, like, there's something about it that's just hits you that's very profound, and to actually, like, see the place where one of my heroes died, was, and I'd been, I've already been to Arlington Cemetery, so I've seen where Kennedy was buried, and that was an emotional moment. But to actually, like, see that and experience that, the only thing that made it kind of difficult was the tourist attraction. You had so many people around there, and I guess it's always weird when, a place of murder, becomes a tourist attraction, but I understand it. So like I said, I didn't stay long in Dallas, and then at that point, I kind of felt I was ready to get back to Birmingham. And again, I was really missing the mountains, and so I drove across Louisiana, and not much to remember about Louisiana, because I wasn't going through New Orleans. That route wasn't taking me through there. And so one of the things I do remember was in Mississippi, as I was coming back. I had just gotten across the border from Louisiana to Mississippi, and the sun was setting right then. And again, I had to stop the car because it was so beautiful behind me. And so I pulled off at this exit, and I'm forgetting the name of the town. But it was in Mississippi, and yo, Tobias, how you doing, buddy? But I had to pull off there, and one of the funny things I remember from this exit was there was actually a drive-through, like, margarita place, where I hadn't seen that before. You could actually drive through and get, alcoholic drinks. I highly support that. I didn't do that, by the way. But I just stopped, again, another open field that I just went into, and where there was nothing in front of me but the sunset. And I think it's one of my favorite pictures that I took from the trip, because of how just huge the sun was during that sunset. Like, it's just imprinted in my mind. So then as I was driving through Mississippi, and just probably one of the really last profound things that happened to me was seeing the sun. I still see the sunset in my rearview mirror. And it was in that moment that I felt this sense of closure about this trip, that I was leaving something really profound behind, but I was taking with me a hell of a lot that was so helpful. And all during this journey, and a lot of you are people that are watching this, and those of you that aren't, but all during this journey, I was getting messages of support from people. And one of the things that I cannot quantify to you enough is how meaningful those things are. To, like, take time today. If there is somebody in your life that has done something inspirational or meaningful to you, or they mean something to you, take the 30 seconds or something to send them a message. Let them know what they mean to you. Let them know that they've done something that, because like I said, I didn't take this trip, thinking that, oh, I'm doing some magnificent thing for anybody. Like, this was all for me, but to hear from people that were talking about how much it inspired them, and how much it inspired so much that they wanted to do the same thing, was so moving to me, because I didn't set out to do that. Like, I wish I could say that I did, but it was completely unplanned, and just something that I needed in that moment. And I guess, and I know I've gone on for a long time, and I appreciate anybody who stayed on this the whole time. But, like I said, the most difficult thing about taking a journey like that is remembering those lessons. And that's another reason why I'm doing this tonight, because, even recently, since the trip, I've been back a few weeks, and there are so many difficult things to still deal with, and setbacks that happen, and I know that keeps happening, and I know that will continue to happen. But the last lesson I'll leave you with that I learned was the determination of your journey. I know it's taken me a while to figure out a lot of things. And I've lived a life where so many of the decisions I've made were based on fear. And I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had not. I've been in therapy now for over a year, which is something that I used to scoff at. I used to say, like, only weak people need therapy or something, or it's not going to do any good or something. But I don't know why we all don't have a therapist, or if you can't afford a therapist, having someone to talk to, because the difficulties of my life have been my lack of self-worth. That's probably been the biggest thing that has driven so much of what my struggle has been, and why it's so hard for me sometimes to see the things that so many of you and so many of my friends, family, tell me that I've done amazing things, and even this trip, people telling me how the ability to do that, and when I came back and I drew a path through the country, and I actually added up the miles. It was 3,620.1 miles through 14 states. And I started to think about just how lucky I was that I was able to do that. And, because a lot of people can't for one reason or another. But the one thing I would say is we all can't take a huge trip like that. Al can't take that time away. I think we must, in some way, find a way to get away from the things that are crushing us. The things that are, because I liken it to an emotional tidal wave is what happens to me usually. Like there can be a good day, and then the crush of everything just comes down on me, and you're looking for something to just take you away from that. I wish I could take a trip like that every day, and sometimes it could be as easy as just getting away to, a town 30 miles away or something. Or just getting out of whatever usual setting that you're in and just, because there's sometimes now that I'll just go to a coffee shop, and I don't drink coffee, by the way, but I'll just go there to write, just get away. And it's incredibly helpful. So that's my journey. That's what, I experienced. And like I said, I'm glad it really meant something to people, because that wasn't my intent. And miles to go before you sleep, sir. Well, I probably will not sleep, Amberly, because my sleep schedule is still not back to normal. A 36-mile trip. Hey, 36 miles is something, though. Hey, like right now, I'd love to just drive 36 miles somewhere. But like I said, I know I haven't been able to get into a lot of specifics about things, and maybe in time I'll be able to do that. But no matter what your struggle is, and again, I am no expert. I am not an expert. I'm not a counselor. I'm the last thing from it. I'm a man who's made a lot of mistakes, and the biggest thing I can chalk that up to is fear. The fear of standing up for myself, the fear of taking steps to achieve my dreams, God, it's such a damn, fear is just the worst thing, and because we're constant, like I said, it's that constant worry of what is going to happen down the road, and what I've found in even these last few months of getting through this journey is it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. And believe me, I'm saying that right now to myself, so I can remind myself of that, because it's still going to be difficult every single day. So anyway, I've rambled for way too long. I thank all of you really for having an interest in this, but more than that, I really, really want to thank you so much for your support. Like I said, your words of support, even if they were the briefest of things, they help so much, and never underestimate the importance of that. And if I haven't like been able to get back to you in that way, or express to you just how much it's meant to me, then my apologies for that too. I unfortunately, because of all that's going on, I get so wrapped up in myself sometimes that I can't, like I said, it's the same problems I always have, that I can't see the things that are right in front of me, and that are there to support me and believe in me, and that appreciation, there's not enough words to express. So thank you again very much for, let's see. Okay, Amberly's asking. I guess I'll stay on for just a little bit if you have a couple questions. We'll make it an hour. How about that? I'll stay. If you have questions, I'll stay on for another 10 minutes. This might sound shitty, but do you think responsibility holds us back in addition to fear? Yeah, I think so. I think, I know, depending on what you're referring to, I think a lot of times we do have a certain responsibility that we feel to people, but what I would say to that is, going back to my first lesson, I think, it's to recognize if there are things that are holding you back, if there's things that are, if you're not happy, for one thing, if you're not feeling true happiness, if your growth, any evolution into what you know you should be, is being held back by people, or situations or jobs. I mean, that's what was happening to me for a long time in a job situation, where I was, working a corporate job for the longest time, and knew in my heart that my dream was to be a filmmaker. And I was trying to balance all of that for the longest time. And it was hard, because I ended up putting so much effort into my work life. And I was, again, too afraid to quit. So that decision got forced upon me when the last employer that I worked for in 2013 let me go. And I was faced now in a career that I couldn't go back into. It was an IT career. At that point, I was competing with kids out of college that had been learning how to program since they were 2. And I couldn't go back into that career. So I felt it was my second chance to do what, again, I should have done in my 20s, because I was afraid. Again, I was too afraid to go out to LA, make my filmmaking dreams happen. And so ever since 2013, that's what I've been trying to do. And so, yeah, I think what you asked, Amberly, there's a great deal of responsibility that holds us back too. But we can't let that affect us either. Like some things just we can't grow in those places anymore. And we can't go back. I think that's one of the biggest tragedies of life, is what we let die inside of us while we live. I think there's a great quote about that. That's not my quote. I won't claim to have that, but it's what we feel we are supposed to be and what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to live, how we're supposed to love. It's something intuitively we know, and we let so many things just get in the way of that. And God knows I did that for years. But at this point in my life, I am determined to not let fear control me ever again. As hard as that is, when it actually is happening, I've already seen the consequences of it. So, all right, Lily said, totally off the subject, tomorrow is May Day. How will you make someone smile? That's a good question. I don't know yet, but I will try to think of something. Sometimes it's the easiest thing. I've recently been revisiting a lot of the footage from my documentary Cuddle, that there was so much footage that I never put in the film. But I was remembering back to the day that we were giving out free hugs in Madison, Wisconsin. And I remember so many moments of just how much it meant to people. Like, I remember at least 2 people that broke into tears from just having an extended hug from a stranger. And that was a moment I was like, that might have made that entire person's day. Like, to have that connection and that human touch for that moment, gave them, like, who knows what that did to them and how that uplifted them. And that's why I say, like, that's, again, one of the strongest things I can convey, is never underestimate the slightest thing you can say or do for someone that means something to you, like to lift them up. God knows we need it in today's world. Amberly, that's brave. You're my hero. God, that's a lot. I don't feel like a hero. Trust me. Bamberg, you just now tuning in? I've been broadcasting now for, 53 minutes. And Bamberg just now tunes in. And I even lit. Look at this. See? I got my softbox up. That was for you, Bamberg. I'm showing you like proper lighting for your Facebook videos. So anyway, and I apologize if you were here earlier and I might have just missed you, but I just saw you popped up. So anyway, okay. So a couple more minutes. If anybody has like any questions or observations or something they want to ask me, that's another thing. Like part of doing this is part of the transparency of my life. Like now it's I want to be completely open about everything, and I mean, some of you may think I've already been way too open, but it's just I'm going to be me. Like I've tried to be different versions of myself. Like Jim Carrey had one of the best quotes. If you see that documentary on was the trip properly lit? Of course it was. If you see that documentary about the making of Man on the Moon. With Jim Carrey, he sums it up so greatly about how so often in life we put on a mask to, a version of ourselves that is pleasing to people. We don't want to upset this person. We don't want to upset that person. But eventually you have to shed all that. You have to shed all that and say, look, this isn't who I am. And so I'm going to be this person. And it may offend you. It may upset you, but those people are going to fall by the wayside, and they probably should have, if that's the way that they're going to respond. And the people that, don't we all respond to that? So what, like when someone is being their authentic self, when they're being who they are, and they're being rough around the edges, and they're, being, like, even though I lit this, I hate even how I look right now, but I don't care, it's like, I'm going to be myself, because I've lived a life so long of not being myself. And I hate it. Like, I hate that I did that, because it is, like I said, it's not the way to live, and I'm not going to do it anymore. Like, I'm 47 years old, and I refuse to live a life that's not mine, to live a life that's not completely what I feel it should be. And like, if other people are allowed to do that, then why can't I? I know I was about to burst into Over the Rainbow. Why can't I? But anyway, yeah, so I mean, I hope some of those lessons, like, like I said, I'm the one that has to be continually reminded of those lessons. So I'm not speaking like any expert here or anything. Not fair to you, not fair to your extensions, be yourself, yes. Well, that's been a hard thing for me, Lily, for a long, long time, is the ability to be myself, because I didn't want to upset people. Thank you, Tobias. You're absolutely right. My lighting is 1,000% better than Daniel's. That's right. And if I had a little bit more time, I was actually going to put, like, a little bit more of a backlight up over here. Just give me a little, like, hairline, little edge, there, but hey. So, Daniel, the bar's been raised for your next Facebook video. Anyway. So anybody else has any questions? I'll give you 3 more minutes, and then I got to end this. I've rambled on for too long. Anybody, anything? DJ just joined. Hey, DJ. I hate that you joined, and I always hate people that, like, join a like, you always feel so bad. Like, you join, like, there's many times I see a Facebook Live video, and then I catch it right at the end. But yeah. But hey, at least they get posted to Facebook, so. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Lisa, my sister. I appreciate it. Thank you, Lily. I appreciate that too. Oh, Bamberg's got a serious question. Oh, God. This ought to be good. Serious question. If it's about lighting, I could tell you all about it. Amberly says, I have no idea who I am, but I think I have time left, and you're young. Laugh and being a kid still. Of course you have time left, Amberly. And Jenny, yes, actually, you are my sister. That's right. Remember, don't type an essay question, because then I'll be here for another hour or something. God, this is going to really be good, I can tell. This is a really exciting part of the show now. Bamberg said, Tobias is mad that my lighting is better than his. Also, seriously, my question. Better than Tobias's lighting? I haven't seen Tobias's lighting. Tobias, have you done Facebook Live videos? I hate if I've missed them if you had. But I'm sure your lighting is better than... I know Tobias. How dare he? Okay, so Bamberg's still asking his question. Yeah, brother from another mother. Lisa, just tell Jenny that. Like, you're an honorary member of the family. That's how it kind of works. I need like some theme music while we wait for Bamberg to type his question. Hang on, I gotta see more. Okay. The trip, did it feel like a rebirth or like the end of an era? Quickest way I can ask what I'm meaning. I'm too lazy for that. Thank you, Lily. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, the word rebirth was something that actually I was thinking when I was driving through South Dakota, and why I felt like going back to the state I was born in would help. You know, that in a sense, like, I was born there in 1971, left the state, you know, and had been living the life that I'd been living. And, you know, and here is this opportunity to, like, start again in a way. And I don't, you know, I don't want to sit here and say that all my problems were solved on this road trip, because that would just be wrong and cliche. You know, because a lot of times we see these movies where people take these journeys, you know, and all their problems are solved by the film's end, you know, and it's far from it. But yeah, it was a rebirth of sorts in the things that I mentioned before, of the things that I learned, and beginning to get that sense of self that I've been lacking for a long time, of finding my ability to stand on my own 2 feet, you know, and make decisions that I know are right, even though they scare the hell out of me. So I hope that answers that, Bamberg. And thank you, Amberly. Like, God, I've known you for years, going back, God, I can't remember the last time. But yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad that this has touched you in some way. And yeah, if you're going through stuff like this, it's absolutely never too late. That's the thing too. Like, I always had this vision as a filmmaker, you know, that I wanted to achieve by age 40. I remember growing up for the longest time, as all the struggles of it, I was like, you know, if I'm not like making money at this full time and supporting myself as a filmmaker by age 40, I'm going to give it up, because the struggle is just too difficult. And my 40th birthday was hell because of that. But what I found is, like, ever since then has been the most creative time of my life. And it's been a very different perspective on it, that, you know, as far as the filmmaking standpoint, as long as I can create and I can do what I love, and you know, as long as I can do that, I don't need to be at the certain level. I mean, obviously, like, figuring out how to make money at it is the struggle, you know, especially when you're really trying to do it, when this is your only living. And it's scary a lot. Trust me, it's scary a lot. But that's the thing, like, setting these artificial goals like that was so wrong of me to do. You know, it was just so, you know, like, why did I kill myself thinking, you know, that I had to achieve this level by age 40, you know? Because it's just, it's never too late to do any of this stuff. It's never too late to start your life anew. Now, I know I'm really sounding like one of those self-help videos, but it's absolutely true. Like, that's one of the things I'm trying to remember, is that, yeah, 40's a big one. I will tell you that. Like, 40 is at least it was for me. That was probably my biggest. Okay, Bamberg's asking another question. When did I make the decision to take this trip? Did you know at McDougal's? No, that was I addressed at the beginning. I had no idea. Because seriously, like, you and I had that great meeting, Daniel, you know, and it really happened right as I got back in my car, and I just sat in my car and just, you know, I couldn't drive back to Birmingham. You know, like, it was just one of those emotional tidal waves that just hit. You never know when they're going to hit. Like, I certainly don't. You know, and I just knew I could not drive back to Birmingham. You know, so I had no idea where I was going. So I won't repeat it, Daniel, but the video will be posted in a little bit. And but I addressed that, how I should have joked that, like, Daniel, like, got me so distraught, you know, that I you know, had to get on the road and leave or something. But it wasn't anything that happened there, because, like, again, it was a great weekend in Nashville. So anyway, all right, I've rambled on for way too long, so I need to close this out. So thank you very much, everybody, for, like, paying attention to my rambling for the past hour. And I really, really appreciate it. And that's it. I wish I had a better closing, but let's see. All right, we'll see what Daniel's last thought. I know it's a celebrity. Colonel Sanders, like 64, he started KFC. He went in the woods to kill himself and had an epiphany. Yeah, so see, 64. Absolutely. So on that note, now that makes me a little hungry. If you ever come to Pittsburgh, please let me know. Will do, Amberly. Yes, Daniel causes emotional breakdown. Story checks out. Yeah. See, I should have joked that. Like, Daniel can do that to people. Like, he will send you on a mission to discover yourself. But anyway, thank you, everybody. Seriously, I need to go. But I appreciate it. And if you ever do have any other questions that you want to send me about the trip, I'd be happy to answer them. And at a future date, hopefully, I can speak to a lot of more things, because this journey is continuing. Like, even though the trip around the country is done, the journey of this life that I'm trying to figure out every single day continues. So, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a good night.